Good afternoon, everyone. Very warm welcome to all of you. I am Alison Every and I am the Director of STEM Careers here at the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering. To begin, I respectfully acknowledge the traditional owners of the lands from where I am joining today, and I'm here on beautiful Ngunnawal country. And I pay my respects to elders past and present, and I would also like to extend that respect to any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people joining us today. As we share and discuss our knowledge and practices, we also acknowledge traditional knowledge and the deep history of innovation it embodies. So before we get on to today's webinar, I just want to start with a little bit of housekeeping. So we would like to remind all attendees that they have agreed to abide by ATSE's Code of Conduct, including as you enter your questions into the Q&A channel. This webinar will be recorded and the recording will be made available on ATSE's YouTube channel shortly after today's session. And we're also happy to send that link through to all registrants. So captions are enabled today, I believe. Thank you, Nita. And so if you require them, they should be popping up in the bottom of your screen. So we are keen for this to be a really interactive session. So please be sure to submit your questions in the Q&A box at the bottom of the screen at any point throughout the webinar. There will be time to, after the presentations, to explore this topic a little bit further. So please do pop in the questions into the Q&A box as you think of them. Before I hand over to today's moderator and our brilliant panelists, I thought I'd share a little bit about me. So like our esteemed panelists, I too have a science background and for many years worked as a researcher at the University of Melbourne, trying to understand why and a little bit more about immune responses to infection and how we can use that information to make better vaccines and other drugs. So on Friday, it's International Women's Day with the theme Invest in Women and Accelerate Progress. And I'm really excited now that I get to oversee a suite of programs here at ATSE that help us to do just that. So through Stella, which brings you this wonderful webinar series, we're encouraging young people to get excited about STEM at school by using hands-on curriculum-aligned resources to explore the principles of sustainable engineering, something that's really topical at the moment. Through our Elevate Boosting Diversity in STEM scholarship program, we provide scholarships for women and non-binary people to access STEM education at Australian universities, and one of our wonderful scholars joins us for this discussion today. And last but not least, we also invest in people through our industry mentoring network in STEM program. So this is where PhD students and early career researchers are paired with influential industry leaders. And we have another one of our participants from the IMNIS program joining us today. So when we deliver our programs, we take very much a holistic approach with inclusive and equitable practices at the very core of all our programs. And this is to support diverse people to access, but also to thrive in their STEM education and careers. So enough from me. Without further ado, I'm delighted to introduce you to today's facilitator for the webinar today. Hi, Katherine. Dr. Katherine Woodthorpe, AO FTSE, is one of Australia's most influential people in innovation. And she's also the president of the Australian Academy of Technological Sciences and Engineering. So we get the great pleasure of working with Katherine quite regularly. She's also a fellow of the Australian Institute of Company Directors and has been a fellow of ATSE since 2015. In 2017, she received an Order of Australia for her ongoing service to research and technology innovation in Australia. She has been a professional director for over 20 years, including as chair of the Great Barrier Reef Foundation, Natural Hazards Research Australia, the Antarctic Science Foundation, and the Hearing Cooperative Research Centre. She's been a director of the Olivia Newton-John Cancer Research Institute, Bioplatforms Australia, and the Australian Renewable Energy Agency, Bar Solar, and listed companies Certex and Antiotech. Katherine previously chaired the National Climate Science Advisory Committee and currently chairs the government's Vision 2040 Committee, reviewing the strategy for investment in medical research for the next 2 decades. So we're really excited to hear from you, Katherine, so over to you.
Hi, everybody. Great to meet you. I just wish I could see you properly, but anyway, it's lovely to have you today, students, educators, and other members of our community. I'll start by acknowledging I'm speaking to you from Cammeraygal land in Sydney and pay my respects to elders and to recognise that they are the custodians of our land and water for millennia, and to acknowledge that Aboriginal peoples in Australia were the first technologists and engineers of all humankind. As we gather right ahead of International Women's Day this Friday, this event is a chance to think about shaping a world that's diverse, equitable, and inclusive. A world where difference is valued and celebrated. This is so important in science, technology, engineering, mathematics, or STEM. And this starts with you and your wonderful, inquisitive, explorative futures as potential scientists, engineers, technologists, innovators, and so on. ATSE's mission, amongst others, is linking to a strategic goal of fostering diversity and excellence in the next generation, and that's you folk. The proportion of women in STEM qualified occupations has increased a bit, but by 2 percentage points, not much. There's still a lot of work to do to achieve equal opportunity across Australia's diverse populations to learn, work, and engage in STEM. The imperative is clear. Research shows that organisations reap significant financial benefit when they have more diverse boards. And ATSE is committed through its programs to lifting the participation of girls and women and people of diverse genders and backgrounds so that they can not only access STEM education, but pursue fun and rewarding careers in STEM and give back to the country because we benefit from it too. It's a two-way street. Everybody benefits when we all live together. So we support access to STEM education from school through to university, and it's critical for unlocking Australia's potential so we can help Australians understand and use technology to solve complex problems, which is ATSE's purpose. So I'm going to share just a little bit about my background, and Luke's going to put me up a slide. So I'm actually going through really just a bunch of pictures, okay? So I know it's a bit weird, but this is the way I think is a nice way to tell you my story. So my story starts, I was actually born and brought up overseas in Malaysia and Hong Kong. I've had a pretty wonderful, maybe a bit weird career. I always loved science. I love stories about flying, especially when I was a little kid, and I would have loved to have been a commercial pilot. But between twists and turns, I ended up doing a degree in chemistry in Manchester University in England. Luckily, I loved chemistry and did really well. And this first picture on the top left shows me in a promotional piece that the university put together to try and get more women into science courses. And this is going back into the 1970s, probably before some of your parents were born. That's how old I am. I was in my second year of uni at the time, and you can see me playing with some pretty cool equipment, and that was pretty state of the art at the time, but I just love big bits of kit. I decided to carry on and do a PhD, though I have to admit, not through any great motivation other than I couldn't think of what else to do at the time, and it seemed to fill a gap. And I did really well, but I discovered I wasn't cut out to be a research scientist. I couldn't focus on that one important research question that great research scientists are able to do. I was too much of a butterfly. But another twist of choices led me to outback Western Australia to the goldfields. And here you can see a picture of the wonderful big red land around Kalgoorlie and one of our drill rigs looking for nickel. I worked as a lab technician doing work that these days would be done by an automatic sampler. Not very rewarding. Also picture me underground, but I could only ever be a visitor in the mine because women weren't allowed to work underground, not legally. Can you imagine that? That law wasn't changed until the mid-80s, and even now I'm still kind of shocked even thinking about it. The other thing women struggled to do was become commercial pilots, so I gave up on that dream, though probably my short sight didn't help as well. But I did love being a glider pilot for many years, and amongst other things, I held the 2-seater height record in a glider at some 28,000 feet, which is kind of roughly where your average 737 flies in a glider with no engine over Scotland. But what to do next? Bored as a lab technician, I realized what I really loved was freedom and people. So I actually went back to the UK at that stage and became a sales rep. And who'd have thought, someone with a PhD would enjoy being a sales rep? I loved it, selling scientific equipment. I traveled the country. I was visiting a pharmaceutical company one day, an industrial chemical factory the next, maybe a forensic science lab. The range of people in different areas of science I worked with made it the best job for me, and I felt like I was the driver of my own destiny. I became the international sales manager for that company, and here's a picture of me in Korea with my sales agent for the country with her colleagues, all in Korean national dress for a function we were hosting. I loved Korea. It was one of my favorite places to visit for work. But I missed Australia and came back to work here again and worked to help other companies export their technology products, and then further on moved on to the boards of those same companies. Some of my board highlights have been as the chair of a hearing research group, and seeing these twins in this picture have their cochlear implants turned on and hearing each other's voices for the first time. And I still get a bit goosebumpy just remembering that. Or when I used to chair the Bushfire Natural Hazards Research Centre, visiting the Hong Kong Fire Services for a big anniversary party. And as I mentioned, I grew up in Hong Kong, so that was pretty special too. I spent some time in venture capital, and here's me at our big conference. The conference was called Alpha, but I like to think I'm the alpha that it refers to in the picture. And again, with the venture capital crowd opening the Hong Kong Stock Exchange for business one morning by ringing their big bell. And the last of these pictures, maybe the best 18 years, was spent chairing an Antarctic and climate change research institution. And this is me down at our base in Antarctica. We flew in on that plane that's behind me, landing on a glacier, which is our Wilkins base runway. Best day ever. And now I get to be president of ATSE, the Technology and Engineering Academy, plus my other favorite to be on the board of the Great Barrier Reef Foundation. So you see, STEM can lead you everywhere, all over the world, through different types of science and different careers, and I use that as a plural, twisted and turned, but I always loved what I was doing, like a butterfly, a sip here, a sip there, but I pollinate wherever I land, and that's what makes me happy. So study STEM. You'll never know where it'll lead you, but I promise it will never be boring, and you'll make a much needed contribution to Australia, or indeed wherever in the world you end up. So that's me. I'm now going to lead you across to our wonderful next speaker, Claretta D'Souza. Dr. D'Souza is a neuroimmunologist. She has combined 6 years in research commercialization, which is, you know, my favorite bit of the world, and industry partnerships, and over 8 years as a medical researcher in neurodegenerative diseases at La Trobe University. Claretta is the commercial project manager for vaccine development at the Burnett Institute, where she oversees the Burnett Vaccine Initiative. And Burnett were hugely important during the pandemic, and their work in vaccines is absolutely well renowned. She manages the partnerships, funding, contracts, and intellectual property. So for another view of where STEM careers can lead you, over to you, Claretta.
Thank you, Katherine, and thank you to all of you for joining us this afternoon. That was quite the story, Katherine. It might be a hard act to follow, but I'll try. So I thought I'd start with all the people that I wanted to be when I was a child. I started off with wanting to be a nurse because someone I knew was a nurse. I then wanted to be a pilot, like Katherine. And someone told me that pilots needed perfect 20/20 vision, and I was wearing glasses. So I let go of that idea pretty quickly, although that is incorrect. I then wanted to be a surgeon, specifically a neurosurgeon. And when I went to speak to my career counselor, she just looked at me and said, "Really? I don't know if you have the patience for patients." And I thought, maybe I don't. So I decided to go into more a traditional science route, and that was to do a Bachelor of Science and become a scientist. And that is what I did. And it took a long time because I did my bachelor's and then my master's and then my PhD. And somewhere along that close to 9-year journey, I also considered becoming a journalist, specifically a science journalist, and also at one point wanting to be a bioinformatician. So I think it's hard at the ages that you're at to discover who it is that you want to be. So I'd suggest not trying to do that and just go with the flow and follow what you love, because that's what I did. And it has taken me through a number of different roles, even though, I only have about 15 years of experience. But I started with choosing science in school. So I did biology, chemistry, and physics. I continued to pursue science through my undergrad and master's. I was fascinated by the brain, always wanted to have something to do with the brain. So now that I wasn't becoming a neurosurgeon, I decided to become a neuroscientist. And that is what I did for almost a decade. And then I discovered that as I was growing older in my mid-20s, I discovered that science, and I use quotes, in the traditional view of, being a laboratory scientist wasn't for me. And it was not because science was not interesting or what I was doing was not interesting. It just didn't give me that sense of fulfillment that I wanted. Discovery research can be a very long game. It's something that you might not see the fruits of for years and years and years. And like my career counselor said, I'm not a very patient person. I wanted to see impact straight away. I wanted to do things that would be out in, for people, helping people's lives immediately. And that's where I went into research commercialization. Still part of the ecosystem of developing new products, new services, and new therapies for people, but doing it from the non-research side of things. And I've found along the way that it makes me happy, it keeps me fulfilled, and I'm still a scientist and I'm still working in science. And none of this means that all of the time that I spent training as a scientist, like Katherine said, is not useful, because a STEM career means you can do anything, mainly because of the way that science is taught. It gives you these skills that are really just applicable towards a number of different roles. And I think perhaps the more important thing is that I don't need to be a journalist or a pilot or a neurosurgeon. I just need to be me, and that me could be doing all of those things, some of those things, or even none of those things. And I've now reached a point where I'm open to my career growing and changing throughout my life. And I hope that in a few years' time, I'll be able to give you the kind of career highlight speech that Katherine just did, because that is truly inspiring. And I would love for my career to be that diverse in the end. So I think the key takeaway is be yourself. If you love science, if you are driven by curiosity, don't let anyone tell you that you can't do it, or don't let anyone tell you that, oh, if you're doing science, you can't do art, or you can't do or music, or you can't do drama. Because I know people who've done all of those as double degrees. I know people who use art and science for science communication. I know people who use science and music for science communication. There's so much that you can do as long as you do what really makes you happy and keeps you excited. The other thing I'd say is to embrace every opportunity, because you don't know what will reveal something to you while you're doing something that you didn't know about. For example, when I was part of the IMNIS program, I had no idea what industry was, and I definitely never had a mentor. But I signed up for it anyway, and it was transformative to my career, because I think in the end, you regret not doing things rather than doing things. So embrace every opportunity, no matter how small it may seem, a job at Macca's or cleaning cars or whatever. Every opportunity teaches you something. It teaches you skills, and you're going to use those skills for the rest of your life, even if at the moment it doesn't sound like you will. And lastly, don't let anyone else tell you what you can't and cannot, what you can and cannot do, because what you choose to do is what matters. So that's all from me. Thank you.
What wonderful advice, Claretta. And to your point about the arts degrees and so on, our former chief scientist, who's also been a former president of ATSE, Robin Batterham, his first degree was music before he went on to become a scientist. And he's still a brilliant organist and plays in his local church as an organist. So they're incredibly compatible. Music and maths go together so well in particular. So yes, I absolutely second that view of do all those things. It's not a choice between one or other. and be who you want to be. I can see that you're following quite a similar trajectory to me in many ways. Yes, I've just got a few more decades on you, but hey, one day. So that's been fabulous to hear about your journey. And again, how it's not one size fits all, and it's not about what one person tells you can and can't do, or should or shouldn't be, or what a scientist looks like. And so now we're going to talk to a different kind of scientist, somebody who has actually kept her nose to that laboratory grindstone and really focused in on a research career, something that, as I say, although I couldn't do it, I admire enormously. So we're now going to get some insights from Lydia Chen, who earned her bachelor degree in advanced science with honours from UNSW, delving into her passion for research and science. And pursuing that passion further, she has just completed, and I've just got to say, like literally just completed her PhD and been awarded it. So it's now absolutely properly and officially Dr. Lydia Chen. And her groundbreaking research revolves around pioneering control methods for cellular cholesterol production. And in addition to those wonderful academic achievements, Lydia serves as an INNIS catalyst for 2023-24 and speaks at many prestigious events for ATSE, such as our Visionary Leadership event. So over to you, Lydia. Dr. Chen.
Thank you, Katherine, for the lovely introduction. I am very excited to share my journey so far, my journey in STEM, although it's going to be a bit shorter than Katherine and Loretta, because I'm just starting my career. And so my passion for science started early. So when I was young and in primary school, I loved the natural world and watching David Attenborough documentaries, staring at insects, animals, and nature. And in high school, I had some fantastic science teachers that fostered this passion for the subject. And in particular, I gravitated towards biology. Now, I was okay in chemistry and physics, but I really, really loved biology. So I decided to study a Bachelor of Advanced Science at UNSW and majored in molecular and cell biology and genetics. So essentially, I studied everything that is inside a cell. I had practical classes at university, and this is not a joke. The most exciting moment of my undergraduate degree was to get bacteria to express a green fluorescent protein and make it glow in the dark. And you can see it in the first picture there. Now, it was one thing to learn about the process from a textbook, but quite another to see, to do the experiment yourself and see it in real life. And so in my final undergraduate year, I completed my honors research project where I became a proper scientist for a year. My topic was on how cells make cholesterol, how they control the amount of cholesterol they make. Now, as part of a research group, I asked questions, I formed hypotheses, I ran experiments to check those hypotheses. Now, I don't have pictures of me in the lab doing those experiments, so I guess I was just very busy trying to get the work done to take photos. But in the second photo there, you can see a picture of my lab bench with some of the cool equipment I got to use. So I graduated the following year and was feeling a bit uncertain about the future. Now I enjoyed my honors year. I had a really great supervisor and decided, you know what, let's do 4 more years of that. And wouldn't it be great to have a doctor in my name? And so I began a PhD on a similar topic with the same supervisor at UNSW. I continued to learn how to be a scientist and working in the lab. And once again, I guess I was too busy doing those experiments and have no photos of me in the lab. But one of the perks of being a PhD student is receiving the funding to travel to overseas conferences to present your work. Now, I presented my research in California in the US and Bangkok in Thailand in 2022 and 2023. And on the topic of art and science not mixing, in the photos where I'm showing off my science poster and giving the presentation, you can see that I've painted a visual summary of my research using watercolors, and I'm using it to communicate science. So of course you can combine art and science and share information in a very unique way. And so I recently finished my PhD, and this involves writing up all the research I completed in the 4 years into a thesis. So at the end, it was 6 chapters and total to about 231 pages. And so I am now Dr. Lydia Chen, but where to now? So I'm at crossroads at this moment in time. As I enjoyed my time researching at the university and learning the science and getting to do the research, but I would like to explore science elsewhere, perhaps in biotechnology and pharmaceuticals. So I was part of the IMNIS mentoring program run by ATSE, and it really inspired me to find a career where I could apply science into industry and see impact a lot more quickly. And it is okay if you are currently feeling uncertain about the future. I'm many years away from high school, but I still don't know where I'll end up. But I know STEM teaches you more than just, how to make glow-in-the-dark bacteria or how cells make cholesterol. It teaches you to be curious about the world, to have the critical thinking and a hypothesis-driven method to answer questions, and problem solve, which will be valuable in no matter what job you decide to do. And thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Lydia. You might not know what you want to be further on. I don't know what I want to be when I grow up either. So it's an existential question that dogs us for the rest of our lives, I think. It would be lovely to have that sort of guiding light on the horizon that I've always wanted to do this, but as I said, I'm too much of a butterfly. So over to Q&A. I'm going to encourage everybody to put questions up, and you can uprate them if you tick on to a question that's already there that you'd like to see asked, and that will help lift the questions up to the top of the page if lots of people want to ask the same question. But I'm, as the facilitator, I get a chance to set off first, and I'm going to ask the same question of each of Lydia and Claretta. But we'll start with you, Lydia. So you haven't, compared to me, obviously, and even to an extent, Claretta, it's not so long since you left school, but technology is changing so quickly these days. What's the most exciting thing you've seen since you left school? What's made something that you've read about or seen or used that you go, wow, this is cool?
So there's traditionally in the lab, you would grow cells in a dish, and it'll be 2-dimensional, and it's a flat layer of cells, and it's what I've used during my PhD, during my honors. But now there is the technology to actually 3D print organs and cells, and so that is, I think, like one of the most exciting things, because you can create a mini brain in the lab and, test medicines, test new drugs, or just to understand how it works. So I think, 3D printing like cells, that is amazing.
I've seen 3D printed cells of heart cells that beat.
Yes.
I don't know. There are times when I'm so far from it now that even getting an idea of how they achieve that is beyond me, because it's just so amazing, just so amazing. What about you, Claretta? What's one of the biggest advances in technology, either in your field or outside, just an app you use or something that you just think is super cool?
I think that things are advancing so quickly, it's hard to keep tabs sometimes, but I recently saw that there is a company in Australia actually working on an non-injectable form of insulin. And the reason, and that means is you can take it orally. And that could be life transforming for so many millions of people, especially those little kids who are born with type 1 diabetes and have to basically take insulin injections for all their lives. And just imagine how transformative having oral insulin would be, especially since insulin also has the distinction of being one of the first sort of molecules that was made patent-free and available widely for that very purpose of transforming people's lives, and was one of the first structures to be found. And now it's gone through this entire revolution, and it's reached a point where we might just be able to pop it in a pill. And I think that's amazing. So I'm looking forward to more innovation in that space.
Yeah, there's been a lot of interesting innovation in diabetes between ongoing monitoring. So, you know, especially I remember parents who had to wake their kids up in the middle of the night to check their blood sugar every single night. And now it's on an app, and the app will tell them, because it's constantly monitored through a patch on their arm, and the app will tell them the minute that the blood sugar falls outside or goes too high in a range. So yeah, to take that one step further and have oral insulin would be truly incredible. Let's see, what have we got on the Q&A here? Okay, I like this. Anonymous attendees, you can write your name on them too, if you like. So whoever wrote this, what would you implement inside schools to increase the amount of female students taking up STEM opportunities? How about I start with Claretta this time, and then I'll give Lydia a chance to answer that too.
I think definitely you can't be what you can't see. That's a line that's used a lot. I would encourage teachers and schools to engage with, now there are multiple programs that allow you to have scientists in your classrooms, either virtually or physically. I can vouch for the fact that we're all very, very happy to talk science. We're all nerds and geeks at heart, I think. So you can reach out to any of us and we would happily come through and talk science. Just to name a few programs, if you haven't already, there's STEM Pals, which was started by a friend of mine. It's doing the rounds at the moment. I think they're recruiting schools and scientists. There's Skype a Scientist that I was part of. That's based in the US, but you know, if there isn't already, let's start an Australian version. And you know, just expose your kids to science, let them see what's out there, and also the diversity of it. Because I think as young people, we think of science as scientists and doctors very often, but that field is so much broader than that. As you know, Katherine's shown all the roles she's been in, I've been in, and I'm sure Lydia will have a career that looks nothing like hers right now in a few decades. So I think it's important to show that diversity so as early as you can, so that they get really curious. And I think it also helps to have science demonstrations in school. So, you know, I remember having primary school experiments. They just whet your appetite in that space in a very different way. Get the kids to get their hands dirty and do the stuff, and that'll get them hooked.
Yeah, programs like First Robotics make a point of encouraging girls it's a school-based program, and makes a point of encouraging girls. And I used to work as a judge on the First Robotics program, and I just loved it because there were so many girls involved.
There's girls who code as well.
Yeah,
there's so many programs, and organizations like ATSE can always help schools link you with these programs.
And a book a friend of mine wrote for his daughter called She's Building a Robot. It's aimed at sort of 9-year-olds, which his daughter was at the time. And so, yes, if there are any teachers out there who'd like to add to their classroom resources, I think that's a great one. I'm going to give Lydia a different question. If a student knows that she'd like to do a STEM-related career, but doesn't know what yet, what would you recommend from a work experience point of view? What could they do in the meantime to get a feel for what they like doing?
I would say in terms of like studying, like if you don't know what you want to do in STEM, you know, choose a few subjects in the first year of uni. And in the first year of uni, it's quite broad subjects like chemistry, physics, biology, and a lot of degrees require, a lot of degrees in STEM would require that as a like a base. And so like, even if you don't know where you want to end up, in the second year of uni, like you can choose a whole range of different subjects and see what you like. And they count towards your degree as well, because you're needed for your majors. In terms of work experience, there's a lot of researchers at university that would take undergraduate volunteers. And so, you know, you can approach a lecturer that you really liked, and ask if they have any positions, or if they are thinking of offering positions to undergraduate students, and they, you know, you come into the lab and you see what their research is about, and you get to be in that space and see what you like. And a lot of universities have internships and placement opportunities as well. And so in my undergraduate, I did a summer internship in the same lab that I did my honors and PhD, actually. And I found that, you know, I really like the people there, and, you know, the research was interesting. And so I decided to keep going with it. And so I would say, you know, approach lecturers, academics, and ask if you can, you know, come into the lab and see what's going on, or even if, you know, just attend a meeting, a lab meeting, and just see what, you know, what's the day-to-day like in a research laboratory. I would say that's a very easy thing to do once you get to university in your first year.
Thanks. Aurelie's got a lot of questions. I don't think I'll get to all of them, but thank you so much for asking so many, and we'll try and get to them outside of this session. I'm just conscious of time, but I really liked your thought about how do you choose a specific STEM degree in university, and I'm going to answer that one, because the most important thing is, what do you love doing? I did chemistry in the end because I actually just really like doing chemistry. For me, that was just something I love doing. So as we've shown you today, your career can go in from any one STEM degree, your career can go in different directions. So I'd say, first of all, do what you love, but secondly, do something that's as broad as possible. So if you're not sure, don't sort of tie yourself down with a degree that's incredibly tight and specific. Do a broad-based science degree, or something that gives you many options that in your second and third years, where you can choose certain paths, so that after your first year, you've got a better feel for what you're really enjoying. I think that's probably the best advice there. I might just, though, ask, there was one more question from Aurelie that I think is a good question to ask more broadly. How do you move on, Claretta, if you feel discouraged about how difficult a future in science might be? Did you ever have that feeling?
Oh yeah, I think it's a rite of passage if you're doing a PhD. I think, yeah, it's part of the experience, because science doesn't come with answers. And if you're asking questions, you're likely to unearth more questions. And if you're not ready for that, you might get frustrated. But I think the importance there is to know that you're not alone. There's a huge community. Everyone feels that way. And there's always 10 different things you could do. So even though you feel discouraged for the moment, feel it, because you should, you're human, and then pick yourself up and start again. There's, I don't think it changes for any career or any, that advice doesn't change no matter what you're doing in life, but just believe that believe in yourself. So don't blame yourself. Learning to accept failure is a very important part of a science career.
And also, again, as you said earlier, don't let someone else tell you what you can and can't do, or what a scientist does or doesn't look like. If you feel that it's not obvious the mold that you are in, and you don't know if you fit, it doesn't matter. Go for it if you want to do it and you enjoy it. There's a great question here about resources and scholarships for mechanical engineering, and it's one I'm particularly keen on because we do not have enough engineers, full stop. We have even less of enough mechanical engineers, and within that, it's the worst engineering topic in terms of having a good number of women in it. So that's a really important one. Engineers Australia and ATSE are working together to see what we can do with that. And I'm going to give that one over to Alison to maybe take offline and see if there's anything Engineers Australia can help us with to pass on that one, because I think that's a really good one. I see that there's a few resources I know that Engineers Australia have. And there are some, the head of Engineers Australia at the moment is an engineer called Romley Maydew, and she's a woman. So it's another example of how it can be done. But, you know, engineers make scientists look really inclusive. I'm afraid it's even worse. But we need you lot to go out and be the groundbreakers for us, please, because it's really, really important. Another
The
question.
ATSE Elevate scholarships are
Oh, yeah,
open to
thanks.
all STEM, so that includes mechanical engineering or any other field of study. So
Yeah.
those are available.
Absolutely. Now, I know that Lydia and Claretta can also read these questions. Is there any question in there you'd like to pick out and answer specifically because it rings a bell for you or resonates for you?
Maybe the one someone anonymous attendee has asked about where to find out about the different branches and fields of STEM. A Google search will do it. But otherwise go for the big organizations like ATSE, who serve as a sort of melting pot of all the different disciplines of science. And even if you just click through the website or you click through people's profiles, you'll see all the different things they've done. That being said, there's also several Australian resources you can look at. There's STEM Australia. I think there's STA, so Science and Technology Australia. If you're looking specifically in biotechnology, there's Oz Biotech. Broader than that, there is MTP Connect. And I'm happy to provide these resources to ATSE to share with the students later on if needed. But there's lots of ways. I mean, because STEM, if you don't know what it stands for, it also includes maths, and maths includes computational science, and the field of computational science is humongous. All of them are very, very big. It's everything from plants and animals to AI and robots. So I would say most careers are STEM careers in some way.
So true. And I'm going to give one lucky last one quickly to Lydia, because we're almost out of time, but it's obviously one that's good for you, because they're asking about, do you have a view on the best universities for biology?
So I'm based in Sydney, so I would say University of Sydney, University of New South Wales would probably be the big ones. But any universities where there is a big research, where they allocate a lot of resources into research in biology, I would say would be good, because you would have options in terms of academics with different expertise that would give you a broad range of knowledge, and the majors they offer as well. There will be quite a diverse different range. So that's what I would say for the attendees from different states. Look for universities that have a lot of academics, lecturers in different areas, and one of them might strike your fancy, and see what majors they would offer. And that also gives you an idea of how big they dedicate their resources to the field. I studied at UNSW. I had a great time there, and they have really good research facilities. So yeah.
Great. Thanks for that. And of course, if you want to get a bit more fine-grained marine science up in James Cook in Queensland, or indeed marine science down in Tasmania, there's pretty well most universities have some branch, might be agricultural biology type sciences that you might want to do. So do your research, but there are universities all over Australia that are that cover all of these topics. So you don't need to feel that you're in a particular state and you'll miss out. We're out of time, and I'm going to thank everybody for sharing your education, your career journeys. It's been so great to meet you. I get a chance to meet the two of you that I didn't have before. So hopefully our paths will cross again, and I look forward to seeing you at one of our events. Lydia and Claretta, thank you so much for your time. And thank you to all the students and teachers and your thoughtful questions. That's been really good to have. I really appreciate those. And I'm going to hand over to Alison to close the session.
Thanks, Katherine, and thank you, Lydia and Claretta. That was a fascinating discussion. I think we could probably go on for another 2 hours, but unfortunately we've run out of time. So yeah, just echoing Katherine's thanks. We will have another Shape Your Future session soon, focusing on water. So bring your questions and ideas to that next one. There's obviously a lot of unanswered questions here, so we're happy to follow up with an email with the link to this recording, plus some answers to those questions. If Lydia, Claretta and Katherine, if we may call upon you to do a little bit of homework for us, that would be wonderful. Now, I'm hoping that one of the team will be popping a link into the chat. There's a survey. We really value your feedback.
Already. Yep.
Great. Thank you. Oh, brilliant. Thanks, Katherine. And thank you, team. Thank you particularly to Luke and Nita, who are, you don't see that they're very busy in the background making sure this looks beautiful and smooth. Yeah, I think we've demonstrated today that STEM is just not about doing science. It's about so many different other opportunities. It's travel, it's talking to interesting people, it's just embracing all the opportunities. It's really kind of believing in yourself and knowing it is for you as well. So I hope you've enjoyed today's session. It just remains for me to thank you one last time and close today's webinar, and look forward to seeing you at the next one.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.